Hi, we've added several features to blocks recently that you may not be aware of, so here's a new batch of videos to get you up to speed. First out is the Blocks Editor, the web-based program that you use to produce and manage your presentations. Here we added a new command that allows you to duplicate blocks. So let's move over to another block group that we have containing a couple of templates. And we want to use one of these templates by making a real block that we can then use to show the opening hours. So let's start by duplicating this block. And we change the name to opening hours. And we put it in the main group. You could put it in any group you like, even if it's not an existing group, by just typing the group name here. So maybe we can call this group entrance signs if we want to. That will work just as fine. Okay, so let's move over to that new entrance sign group where we have this newly duplicated block. And this now contains a complete copy of the previous block, so it's standalone and it's not depending on the other block in any way. So we can now go in and we can change the text here to opening hours and go back out, and then we can deploy that block to a spot to make it show in this way. Sometimes the block you want to use may not be on the block server where you want to use it. So you can move it from one server to another by first exporting it to zip file, transferring that file to the new block server, and then importing it there. So let's say we want to use this block, which is on my local computer here, on this server, which is on another computer. I can select this block and then I choose export a zip file, and that downloads this block, including all its content, into a file that you can see appearing here now. So now this file, including all the content and all the media files and everything else inside of it, can be deployed on this server over here. So let's go over to the main group here and we choose import zip file. Pick that zip file that we just downloaded from the other server, and it asks us about the name, so let's keep the same name and we put it in the main group. You can see that group name down here, so it will show up right here. It takes a little while to upload it because it's a fairly large file, but as I said, it includes everything, in this case a couple of fairly large video files, so it's very nice to have everything in one package, allowing you, for example, to make backups of blocks to just store them for safekeeping, or maybe you are going to make some significant changes to a block and you want to preserve it the way it was before you started to make those changes, etc. And now you have this block transferred to the other server, and again you can just deploy it onto the spot where you want it to appear. There are two primary kinds of blocks in blocks. Yeah, it's confusing. The name of the product and these kind of media elements are both called blocks. This is called a top level or a root level block. These are the ones that you can deploy and drag to displays and play, essentially the container of content that you can play back. Inside these you find what we call child blocks. So it's blocks all the way down in a sense. And while you have always been able to go in and copy and paste from within a root block, copying and pasting content, so if you want to just duplicate these three slides here, you can select them, you can copy them, and then you can paste them in down at the end here or anywhere else within this root block that we're in here, this ISE Cases Museum. You have not been able to copy and paste between blocks. Between root blocks, that is, but that has been added in Blocks version 3, which is very convenient. So let's say you want to reuse those three slides that I just copied there, and you want to make a new slideshow. So we make another one, new slideshow, and then we can just go ahead and paste them right in here. And when you do that, those three images in this case, or whatever blocks that you have copied, will be transferred from the root block where you took them from here, and they will be transferred over to this block. So it still keeps each block self-contained, and if you now export this block and move it somewhere else, all the content will go with it. So that's really a time saver if you want to reuse content, parts of content from one block into another. Of course, if you want to reuse the entire block, you can just duplicate it, as I showed in a previous video using the duplicate command right here. The composition block allows you to combine other blocks in any way you want. So in this case I have a couple of buttons here, and I have an image. You can see them lined up over here as well. So the arrangement that you have here also represents the layer order. So if I take that image and I put it on top, you can see it's covering this button here. So this is a way that you can combine any other kinds of blocks that you can add, and you can see you have all the regular usual suspects here in terms of other kinds of content blocks and controls like buttons and sliders and so on. You can arrange them on a page in this way by just dragging them around. But of course sometimes you want to have it a little bit tidier, and then one way of doing that is to select a number of child blocks, either selecting them here or selecting them over here, and then you can use the layout command to maybe align them horizontally under each other, or if you want to align something to the page in a particular way, like the image I have here, I can align that to the middle of the page in this way, or also horizontally in the same way, center like that. So that's one way of arranging elements. You can also select multiple elements and move them together, or you can change their size. In this way, these couple of buttons that we have here, just drag their corners in this way. If you press shift, then you change them, you can constrain, so you change them only in one way or the other according to the horizontal or vertical axis. If you do the same thing with an image, if you just move it like this, you see you can get this really weird aspect ratio. But if I press the shift key at the same time as I am dragging it, then you can see I'm constraining it to the natural aspect ratio of this particular image. So that's a nice way to make sure that images stay in the proper aspect ratio. By the way, if you press shift before you click the image, then it toggles the selection. So if you want to use shift to constrain the aspect ratio, start moving the image first and then press shift, and then it will apply. Otherwise, if you press shift and then click here, it will deselect the image, which isn't really what you want to do. Another way to keep things neat and tidy is to go back to the composition, the outer block here, and select snap to grid, and in this way you can align these elements to an invisible grid on the page, so they will snap now to every 10 pixels. If you want to change that, you can change that to say you want to snap to every 30 pixels. Then you just change that snapping here, and then you can just drag them and it will snap to every 30 pixels instead. So you can have the kind of grid that you want to work with in terms of aligning elements. A key feature of PIXILAB blocks is the way it allows you to combine content together by putting blocks within blocks. So if we open up this block here, you can see at the top level it's an attractor, which is a block that has two different modes depending on whether someone is currently interacting with it or if someone is not interacting with it. If it's interacted with, then it will show the content of the first block, and if it's not interacted with, it will show any other block that's in this attractor, which in this case is the menu. So this is what you will see on the screen as you approach this display spot. And when you start interacting with it, then it will play a couple of different videos that live under this wrap film. So you can see there's a couple of videos here. So as you can understand, these block structures can become quite complex, and you can see we're now 2 levels down into what is at the top an attractor, which is shown by this icon here, and the next level is a composition, and then we have a book, which is what we're inside here. If we can go down even further, you can see that we're in the tag selector, and here we have the actual video files that can be played. And you can navigate in this structure by going up one level here, or you can also, if you want to go back to where you came from, you can click the browser back button, and that goes back to the previous block. You can go all the way up to the top level, and you can get back up to the dashboard by clicking the logo out here. So that's one way of navigating, going through block by block through here. Another way of navigating, particularly useful if you have a very complex structural blocks, is using this rather new child block navigator up here. So if you click this, you can see the entire structure of this block. You can see the root level attractor here, and then you can see the wrapper that we just looked at, and here you have the films, and here you have the 3 tag selectors that are used to play the correct language of the film, and here we have the actual films. So if you want to go to this block here named Luis, you can just double click here and it will jump straight to that. You can see the 2 films that are in that block right here. Then another use of that is if you want to create a button. If you go back to the top level here, there's a menu here, and this menu are actually 2 menus. It's a language selection menu, and then it's another menu here with buttons for the different persons here to go to the page that contains the films of that person. So if we go to this page here, we can see that there is a button for Eddie here. So we go into Eddie, and you can see there is a button sitting on top here. This is an invisible button here that is just used to jump to the target block. You can see the target block is in Wraps Films Eddie. You can just type that path in here, and that corresponds to Wrap Films Eddie. Let's go back to where we were. But sometimes typing that in is a bit tedious. So again, you have that little block hierarchy picker here. So instead of typing it in, you can press this one, and then you can find the right, in this case, film. Let's say we want this button to go to Luis instead. We just double click this one, and it will change this so it will go to the desired location within this block. So that's a great time saver for navigating and for locating target blocks.